So 3.0, first of all, we plan to release early in 2027. Now I want to talk a little bit about data, about UI. Last time I spoke a lot about UI and about improving things, and today we also saw a lot about how we tackled UI in 2.5 and what we wanted to change, or what we actually did change also for the 2.5 release. So another UI update for 3.0. But it's really not just UI. It's actually a lot more than UI. It's rethinking how you use the data that you already have in your Checkmk instance and how you use that to get the most value out of it, to come to a resolution of your problems faster. And for that, we do have a long-term vision. You might see at the top, this is where we're headed, and most importantly, Checkmk 3.0 lies somewhere along the way. So it's really a step in the next direction, a step towards the target, but it's not necessarily meeting everything at once, because also we have limited capacity, obviously. But enough of nice slides and words. Let's dive into a demo how this could look like. You might be very familiar actually with that kind of page. It's an all hosts view. And most of you will probably use this on a daily basis. But if you look carefully, it's a little bit different. Actually, it's a lot different than the all hosts view that you might know by now. A lot of the capabilities that you had before or customized it somehow move directly into the view, because this is implemented 100% in the front end. So let me show. First of all, there's something like a search. You can search in the all hosts view, for instance, for some hosts, and it is super responsive, so you immediately get the result of those hosts. You could group. There was grouping before, but there was no dynamic grouping, no grouping that you basically are able to do on the fly, maybe by state, maybe by folder, or maybe by even folders and labels, by additional things as well. Or you might be interested in just hosts that are down, or hosts that are on top of that unreachable. So actually it's something that is really dynamic, really responsive in the way that shows you the data, how you need it, the data that you're interested at that point of time. But we do have actually a lot more functionality. Why does it have to be a table at all? Does it have to be a table? By now you should all be familiar with our hexagon view. I mean the beehive, basically. But we do not just need to show it like that. We could also say, let's group the beehives, maybe by state, or maybe by folder. This should already give you a pretty good overview and an idea about what we're targeting for. But at the end, all of this was basically like a fancy list, right? So a list on steroids is probably a little bit better than what you had before, but nothing that game-changing. But you could also have the information about your hosts on the fly, directly in the view where you have the host. You are able to access the information that you're interested most, like an overview of your host. It could show you maybe the labels, maybe the operating system that you're running. Or you could dive into the details, like when was the agent last executed, what is the check period, or something like the contact groups or the notifications that are set around. Or the famous parameters of this host, where you might see immediately which rules do apply to that host and allows you to change them on the fly. Or we're even thinking about additional things like availability, inventory, or maybe even like the event history of that particular host. On top of that, what about having actions directly where you need them? Like a host where you can acknowledge problems directly on this view, or schedule downtimes. The normal linking of the host doesn't go away, though. I can still go and follow that host to see the services of this host's overview. And here we want to apply exactly the same paradigm. Being able to show the information that you're most interested in, like searching for something like a CPU load, or filtering for warn crit unknown services as well. And also for the services, we want to go in the direction of having the information where it matters most to you, directly at the view of the service overview. You might be able to see something like overview, something like the details of the service, maybe even some availability of the service, or some history as well. So far for the demo, at this point, obviously this is a very, very early mock-up, right? So it's important to state it doesn't land exactly like shown. But it's important to paint the picture of where we are headed. So we want to touch two views. We want to touch the all hosts view, and we want to touch the services of a host view. And I don't know if you were looking closely in the demo. We also want to be able to get finally rid of this, the management board. Actually, it's part of the reason why I need to take this part of the talk, because Martin, he said like he cannot go on stage anymore telling this didn't land in a release. So this time around, it actually will. So we want to be able to get rid of that, and that's why we want to introduce something like host relations. You might be able to say like, this host is a parent of another host, or this host is a child of another host. It's really about the relations between the different hosts. Hovering over it will give you something like a host name that, or a link even, that you can follow and see basically afterwards which host is related to that. Also in that view, you will see what is the parent or what is the base host of the host that you're currently at, and where is it actually coming from. Thinking this through, this will allow us later on to introduce even more views on top of the views that we just saw. Like views based on host relationships. Views where it is immediately clear if a host is down, that will lead to another host being unreachable because they are interconnected via the host relations. Important is here, we are introducing the concepts, but this will probably land beyond 3.0. It's not something that is easily done, it's something that touches the very core of how we do these relationships. Coming to the timeline for that. What we want to do for 3.0 is already very, very ambitious. The things that I just showed you, this will keep the team busy for quite some time. We will tackle the most important views, and we aim for a great out-of-the-box experience. This really means that there are also some limitations, unfortunately. It's only 2 views out of very, very many views, and this time around, we will probably not offer something like a build-your-own-view option. I firmly believe that at this point, we also don't need it entirely, because a lot of the customization that you guys need to do is because of a lack of the features that we had. And in the new views, you will have these features out of the box, like filtering, like grouping, and so on. So the need for customization will actually go down. But obviously, not all of those things are addressed, and that's unfortunate that we don't offer that for the next version yet. The evolution here is quite parallel. So we will keep the classic views for some time to come and build the modern views for you to opt in. So you don't have to use them with 3.0, but you can use them and hopefully will use them because we will offer them in a very, very powerful way. One thing that we have learned during the UI development across the recent years is that in order to build the right thing, we need feedback. And we need quite a lot of feedback if we're touching something like an all hosts view or services of this host view. And that is why we decided to do something that we didn't do in the past. We want to also offer those views as experimental in 2.5. So they will land not in the final version, but in some patch release, some version of those modern views will land, and you can try them out and directly give us feedback about them already in 2.5. So I really invite you to take the chance, try them out, and tell us along the year what you think of them and what we still can improve. The last few years, we actually accelerated our development in the UI. This has been possible because we changed a lot in the background, a lot of the architecture that drives our whole system. We tear apart lots of the code, moved it to a new framework, moved it to a front-end rendering. In 2.4, we started with individual workflows, something like quick setup, which you are probably now very familiar with, something like notifications. In 2.5, we doubled down in that direction by improving a lot across the dashboards. And you saw in today's great talk already what the capabilities this new framework is able to bring to the table for you. In 3.0, we get even more ambitious. We want to touch the views at the very heart of Checkmk. And actually, not just the views, but as I showed you, the complete way how you are interacting with the data that you already have. Connecting the dots. Great dashboards. We saw today what they need. They need to be easy to build and easy to edit. I think we got that covered with 2.5 pretty well now. They need great views. Hopefully, now you're convinced that we will have great views in the future. So also that is kind of covered. What else do we need? We need great graphs. And for that, I brought a second demo for today. So imagine graphing in Checkmk might look like this. The first thing that I want to highlight is that we want to change the way how your time series works. We want to change what you are able to see here. Maybe you want to see the last 4 hours, and actually all of your graphs adapt. Maybe you want to see like the last 8 days. Maybe you want to see something like a custom time range or some named ranges that are fairly easy to select. We do have something similar already inside, but it's nowhere close to this powerful. Maybe you want to quickly reset the zoom as well. Or maybe you might notice there is some peak, and you want to actually analyze what happened around the time of the peak and actually what is the data there. So you might be wondering, like, what about zooming? What about panning? What about going into those views? Maybe you even want to do something like pinning of the data, so you actually are able to see the value that your graph has at that point. Or maybe you want to reduce the information by having graphs that are actually interactive, where you can say, let's turn off this part or turn it back on or turn off this part. Because you're really not interested in a complete system, you want to drill down on a particular issue. So a lot of this is an early mock-up as well. It might not land exactly like that, but it's our current way of doing things. The last thing that might be bothering you for quite a bit is also something like a panning, where you can just pan the different graphs and have a look. And maybe after you're done, you can reset your view and then remove the pin as well. So that's about the graphing demo. What we want to do here, to summarize, we want to have a global time picker that it's much, much more powerful than the one that you have. We want to touch zoom and panning. We want to have something like an inspect mode, where you can see what really matters. We want to improve the legends. We want to have enhanced tooltips and a lot more smarter pinging. At the end, this means that we will completely replace the graphing framework. We will remove the old one and go to a complete new UI stack and basically move it to our new front-end framework that we invested a lot in the past. Are we done yet with dashboards? Not entirely. There's still some features that you guys might be missing. It's some additional class of widgets, some separator, some bars, some divider lines. So basically some make-ups to make your life easier to structure all of the stuff in the new dashboards available. Something like dividers, something like containers, or even something pretty simple like formatted static text. All of this might be helpful for you to build upon with the new dashboards and maybe even create something that is shareable, as you have seen in the last talk, because with static text, it's just a little bit more beautiful. Modern IT is complex. So we do have individual dashboards, but the real value lies in connecting the dots. And connecting the dots actually also means connecting the dashboards, right? You want to have dashboards where you're able to drill down to further analyze a problem. You're not interested in the big overview and somewhere else in the small overview, but you want to have those two things connected together. Drilling down is already possible in parts of our system. So if we are talking about, for instance, Kubernetes, here you see it. You do have, for instance, one deployment like the PHP Apache where you want to drill down into, and this can already be done, right? You see now that particular deployment and see also things about that particular deployment. So what is the problem? The drill down dashboards, they currently work by setting filters. And setting those filters is something more or less reserved to us and our developers because it requires basically writing custom code. Because a lot of the filters, they are not truly available for you to select and to set. We want to change that for 3.0 as well and enable you to build the drill down dashboards yourself. Because IT is unique, IT has many different facets, and you are the ones who can decide, like, these are the connections that are actually helpful. These are the connections that you want to build, and in 3.0, you will be able to do so for yourself. Now, one more thing, yeah? If you're with Checkmk for quite some time, you might be familiar with that picture. At the end, this is an IT infrastructure, and this is basically visualizing all the stuff that you have there. This is what Nagbis does now for 20 years. Nagbis is originally independent from Checkmk, but it was very tightly integrated, which means that a lot of you are actually using it. It has a different tech stack, different UX, and it's also not that well, yeah? But it has still been in demand for many, many years. And with the new development capabilities around AI coming in, a lot of activity has actually developed in that realm. And by the way, it's also something that you guys have requested, something like giving Nagbis a proper facelift. The good news is this is already on the horizon. So we have already a working prototype out in the forum that you can have a look at. But how did we come to that? What is very interesting is, and at this point really shout out to Ronnie, one of our developers. Because at the end it was something that was very important to him. Like, he basically switched sides. So he was a Checkmk user in the past, and he switched sides to becoming a Checkmk developer. During the time that he was a user, he used Nagbis quite a lot, and that's why it's very important for him, because it's of the capabilities. And what he now did is, actually in his free time, he developed Orbvis, and it's something that now landed as open source on GitHub, and it's something that we want to support. So for you try it out. It's already close to being feature complete. Head to the forum, download it, try it out, and move your Nagios over there and give us feedback about it. This feedback might shape how we continue the journey with Orbvis, and it might actually lead to us replacing Nagios at some point. So help accelerate this going forward. To summarize what we want to do with the next one. In 2.5, we laid down the foundations for some of the things to come. We touched the dashboards. They are now easily creatable, easily editable. You can share them with colleagues, and they work on any screen size. In 3.0, we double down on that, but we touch even much, much more. We touch the views. We want to do the all hosts view and the services of this host view. On top, we want to completely overhaul the graphing system. We will build drill down dashboards and allow you to have even more widgets in your dashboards. This is the part of the UI, and now I head to my colleague Martin back, who tells you about what else is to come.
So that's already a lot of exciting changes coming to Checkmk 3.0. These were the first 20 minutes. We have 40 more minutes. So let's go into monitoring, into full-stack observability. And when I look at IT organizations, then I see always a pattern. And the pattern is that we like to structure our IT organization by this stack. So we have a team for networking, for storage, a Windows team, a Linux team, database team, and a lot of application teams. Yeah? The thing is, bugs, they don't really care about your stack, about your logic, how you structure your organization. Bugs can be in the application, bugs can be in the database, in the runtime layer, also in the service, in the virtual. They don't care. They just impact wherever they're in the stack, they impact everything. Yeah? And I think that's why in the industry there is a lot of talk about full stack observability. Yeah? But I think, let's be honest about it, it's very complex. Yeah? It's not an industry standard, even though many say so. When you look at the reality, then you see it's actually a very different picture. For example, we interviewed Datadog users. Yeah? And I think we interviewed 25 Datadog users and asked them what capabilities of Datadog they're using. And turns out 15% of them use tracing, so APM. Most of them rely on metrics and logs. And then Checkmk users, we also always ask, what did you use before you used Checkmk? 30% of them didn't use any monitoring. And I think that shows that infrastructure monitoring is really still the most important piece. Yeah? Because without infrastructure monitoring, without infrastructure, there's nothing above. But I think it's important that we go towards full stack because the bugs, they don't care about your stack. And I think it's a journey. It's a journey for you on that path, but it's also a journey for us. Yeah? And what we want to provide is, we want to be the person and the company who help you also on that journey. Yeah? And same to Torsten, I think Checkmk 2.5 is already a big step towards this full stack observability. And what I will share with you is also a vision. Yeah? But I believe that Checkmk 3.0 will be actually very close to that vision. And because without a good foundation, you can't really build a proper house. I think we need to start at the foundation, at the network layer. And network monitoring, if you think about it, is actually something that Checkmk does quite well. It's one of the bread and butter businesses of Checkmk. We are very good at monitoring switches, firewalls, nearly anything which talks SNMP. And I think thanks to the great work of Thomas, yeah, we also know how the network is interconnected. And so with Checkmk, we can see the health of network devices. We can look from the outside. We can see utilization. We can see 78% of the pipe is full. But what we don't know is who is talking with whom and why and about what. And the knowledge about that is called network flow monitoring. And so with 3.0, we plan to introduce network flow monitoring to Checkmk in a native fashion. And so let's take a look at that together. I also have a demo for that. Okay, so imagine you get an email alert, there's a bandwidth spike on an interface, and now you want to see, okay, is that something curious? So you look into Checkmk and you look at the interface, and then you see, okay, seems to be a spike. And if you look at the path, you see, okay, this seems to be something out of the ordinary. But Checkmk doesn't tell you why is that spiking. What is the root cause of that? And that's the magic of NetFlow monitoring. You can then look into that. Let's take a look how that looks like. So you go into NetFlow, and that has the ability that you can see what kind of traffic do you have. Here, okay, it's mostly HTTPS traffic. And then you can look, okay, which talker actually caused that? Where does that traffic on that interface come from? And you can see, okay, it's from that source to that destination. So some data is being sent to DigitalOcean. It's actually almost everything of what we see on that interface. And then we can look at the exact network flow and see, okay, this has been going on for 17 minutes now, and this is one big flow of sending messages out. And with the information correlated around it, you can see it's mostly some digital provider, like DigitalOcean, where it sends to, so you don't know exactly what, but you know kind of where it's going. You know it's going to the United States. And so this is something where you can then, for example, also look deeper and correlate it with previous data to see, this is a newly seen peer, something which doesn't typically happen. This is considered as a more risky destination, so this is something which you might really want to look at. And that is the magic of network flow monitoring, because you can see really in depth into the network. It has a lot of more things. This was just like, I think, the best use case, because typically in the Checkmk world, we look at the interface, we get our alert, but then we don't know more. But with network flow monitoring, you can also have the bird's eye view. You can say, hey, let's look at traffic report to see what kind of traffic is happening in total in the network, in which, so let's zoom out, hope you can still see it. What kind of categories, what kind of applications, which protocols, also what is the quality of the network traffic. See the top talkers, the top local hosts, but also the top remote hosts where you have the traffic to. And you can even then go into, because when you know who is talking with whom about what, it opens a door to understanding, is there something problematic? And that is something which NetFlow also helps quite a lot with, that you can run behavioral checks to see, is there something suspicious? So this is a little demo of NetFlow monitoring. And this is what we want to achieve in Checkmk with NetFlow monitoring as well, that you can have all this visibility. That you have the analytics, that you can see in real time what flows are in the network, but you also have historical analysis, that we enrich this information with, for example, geo-IP, that you really can not only have IP addresses, but you can see more where does it actually come from and go to. And at some point also have threat detections, because then you have a complete different perspective on your data and on your monitoring. And now you might be wondering, when does that come? Does that all come for Checkmk 3.0? And the reality is, this is a complete new field for us. Network flow monitoring is something, as an area where you need a lot of expertise. But we are actually quite hopeful that for Checkmk 3.0 we will have a broad spectrum of the features which you have seen today. Cannot promise, because a lot of moving parts at the moment, but I think the chances are good that we can jumpstart the development and you get something quite nice in 3.0 already. Now let's jump to the other end, to applications. Fortunately, I still have my beer here. And as I showed you yesterday, we made pretty big strides in application monitoring. We have now generic ingestion mechanisms for both OpenTelemetry and Prometheus, and we have ClickHouse as a high-performance backend, which is perfect for handling metrics at scale. And I think that's a really great foundation to build on and improve further on. And that is the main goal in the area of application monitoring for us, that we just introduce more capabilities and improve the integration into Checkmk. And for that, I have, it's not a demo, so don't switch. I have a non-interactive demo for you, because it's actually quite complex to do it on live, and I tried it before and I made so many mistakes, so that I went the safe way for that one. But no worries, I have other demos further on, later on. So, in this new world of application metrics, or in the new world of OpenTelemetry, metrics are a little bit different. Yeah? In this case, we have a metric which is called app front-end requests. So the requests made to a front end. But this metric, it doesn't come just in one way, it comes in many forms and shapes. And each dimension has a unique metric. For example, for different methods, get or post, you get a unique metric. But also for different status responses, for 200 or 500 response, you get a unique metric as well. And as well, for each target, you also get a unique metric. And that is quite helpful because it allows you to look at one specific thing if you want. You can say, tell me the requests, the post requests with status code 200 on the checkout. And that is if you want to really zoom in. But very often what you actually want is to know the bigger picture. And for that, one has aggregations. Yeah? And aggregations are the one thing which are currently missing in 2.5 and the one thing which we want to add in 3.0. We might actually also add them already earlier. And to understand aggregations, let's take a look at them. Yeah? I now created an aggregation of sum by. So I just get actually all individual metrics summed up so that I can see the entire requests. With aggregations, you can also then start to split them. Yeah? Here I aggregated by everything, but I can also say just sum me the things up per status code. Because then I can see, oh, the spike, that's requests with a status code 500 at that point in time. And okay, you might now say, okay, nice, that's for applications, but what about you? Does that actually matter at all for you? And actually it does. I think we just had that recently in the forum. Someone actually asked for exactly that, because we didn't have a plugin for that specific device or that thing, but it was speaking Prometheus or OpenTelemetry. And so he wanted to have the CPU utilization for that thing. But if you want to calculate the CPU utilization, it's actually not a simple thing, yeah? Because CPUs, you don't typically have just one core. In this system, we have 8 cores. And each core is actually running in different states. And so to calculate the actual CPU utilization, what you need to do is you sum first per CPU, because then you know what is the CPU utilization per CPU, and then you average over all CPUs. And then what you get is the actual CPU utilization. It looks complex, yeah? And that's the benefit of Checkmk plugins. That's why you have them, because then you don't have to do that. But in case they're not, that's what you would actually have to do. And with these aggregations, you can actually go one level further, because if you just make a small change, you can actually get the CPU utilization, in this case, per service. And these aggregations are very powerful. Yeah? And in this new world of metrics, you do need them. Yeah, I think for a lot of cases, you're still fine, because you don't need it in every case. And if you don't need it, then in 2.5, you're already fine. But there are enough cases where these aggregations are incredibly helpful. And now I actually have a demo. Because we have seen now we get these nice graphs. And now how do we actually get from graph to alert in this new world? And so what I will do is I'll create a custom graph. Yeah, this is how it might look like in the future. I take the front-end requests, and now I filter by status, and which starts with 5. Because then I have my front-end request 500 with 500 status code, and this is the one which I actually want to have an alert on, because if that happens, I know something might be problematic. And then, it's a little bit hidden, but here I can create a service from that. I call it 5xx error something, and I can assign them to a host, and then save that as a service. That's one entry point, how we think about how you then can create from graphs services for monitoring. There's also another path which we plan to do, and that's this path to create custom services. We can see the one which I already created before. You can see it looks very similar from that entry point. It's just a different path. It's the same thing. We have the front-end request, looks almost the same, and it's similar. And what you can do then when you're here and when you come from that direction, because when you typically come from that direction, you also want to set up the alerting for it. So you know and say, let's create an alert for that as well. Let's call it 5xx requests. It's already set with the right filters for that specific service. We don't care about the host conditions. It matches on one host for one service. Then we set thresholds. We just take what is proposed. This is a little bit too much. Maybe we go to 100. Wouldn't it be nice if it looks like that in Checkmk? And then we can also set the evaluation that we only want that if it's for more than 5 minutes above that level. And then we see there's already a matching notification, so we're actually good to go and can just create and activate the changes. Okay, that's a demo how we think about getting from graph to service to alert, and then also notification. And that's, I think, the way when you go the custom service path, the custom metric path. But one of the values with Checkmk is that you get also key metrics out of the box. And we have that in 2.5 because you get these RAD metrics. And we have also how they come. They are automatically created services, these RAD services, and they look at basically when you instrument the application open telemetry, you get traces and spans and HTTP metrics, and it calculates the request error duration based on these information. And you configure that actually via the dynamic configuration. Yeah, there's an open telemetry connector, and you can assign that, for example, via the resource attribute. I think we even had a question around that before. This is a very limited option because your host name might look actually very different to what you want to assign it to. And also, if you do it at the moment, what you get is you get a lot of unneeded services. So I, for example, use a disabled services rule to get rid of all the OTel metrics because I only care about the RAD metrics. But that's kind of a limitation, and that's what we want to address in 3.0, that these limitations, that these nuisances, they don't bother you anymore. And for that, we plan to extend the OpenTelemetry, connected the dynamic host management with a much more flexible way. One path, how we filter the data, that you can use what I've shown you in the graph as well, that you can use regular expressions or starts with or exact match for metrics that you get exactly what you want. Then that you can create host names for these things based on macros so that that matches your logic which you have as a naming convention in your company. That you can also use that to match these metrics to hosts which are already existing in Checkmk. And that you can control also the created metrics. For example, if you just want the RAD services, you would check that. And if you want a custom service, then you just define which metric should be discovered as a service in Checkmk. And I think with that, in Checkmk 3.0, we really amplify your abilities to monitor any metric. You can ingest any metric, you can visualize any metric, and you can monitor anything. But unfortunately, this won't be enough for you, because we know that without a user, you actually don't get a lot of application metrics. You always need a user to see if something is going wrong when you are based on passive monitoring. So that's why we for years now have recommended that you go towards proactive monitoring with synthetic monitoring. And over the last years, where we focus is that you can test any application. That's the base part, that's the foundation, because if you can't test any application, then it doesn't really have the value. The one thing which was missing was, how do you make that actually into a great monitoring experience? And for that, I have another demo. At the moment, we are still lucky, nothing goes wrong with our demos. And at the moment, all the synthetic tests which we use, they always create hosts and services. Hosts and services have a fundamental limitation on how you can display information. And when it comes to synthetic monitoring, the information is not one-dimensional. Synthetic monitoring information is multidimensional. Yeah? For example, you might have multiple locations from where you test an application. You also have a lot of applications which you test, and the ability to slice and dice through that data is quite important. For example, in this case, we can see, okay, we only have an issue in the Frankfurt location, not very often, but sometimes, and we can see in New York it's not very good. Yeah? And we need different perspective, different lenses into that. Yeah? And then we can zoom down. We can, for example, say, let's switch the perspective, because now we don't care so much about the actual application, which you can see here on the left, the tests, but about a different context, about, because we have seen that in New York there are some problems. Do these problems, are they across everything? Are they just in a specific time frame? And you can always zoom down. You can say, okay, hey, let's take a look at that here, and filter into it and see, okay, it's just this specific application which has an issue. Go deeper into it and see really why it failed, how it failed, and have all the details at a glance. And lastly, we also want to provide I would say this is the one catch-all view, yeah, because you can set your context differently. For example, instead of a site, you could just say, show me it by environment or host name, whatever. You can filter it as you wish. You can also say, show me here just something specific, and it adapts that completely to your needs. So this is the thing which is the advanced view. But for most people, you would say this is the basic view which you need. But what we want to really provide is a very powerful way how you can interact with that synthetic monitoring data, so that it provides, in the end, the value which you put in when you write the tests. Yeah. Okay, that's a demo on synthetic monitoring. And keep in mind, these are all plans. Yeah? We are now in June. We started 1 month ago. Our plan is to finish in December, so I'm very hopeful that our team gets quite a lot. I've seen in 2.5 how much they were able to move, so I'm very in good faith that I think we get a lot of the things, and if not, they will come in 3.1, I think. Yeah. So bugs, they can happen in your entire stack. Yeah? And some people, you know, they had the illusion that when you go to the cloud, you don't need monitoring anymore. Yeah. I see people laughing because that's correct. I mean, we really had the discussion, everyone, like many years ago. Fortunately, a lot of people don't think like that anymore, because I think everybody knows you also need monitoring in the cloud. And cloud monitoring is something now foundational. Yeah, we asked again. No, we do a lot of service actually with users, and we asked 54 Checkmk users if they already use cloud monitoring, and 65% of them use it now. That's already a decent number, but if you ask them, do you use it now or do you plan to use it in the next 2 years, the number goes to 89%. And the same picture we have in container monitoring. At the moment, it's albeit a little bit less, 43% use container monitoring with Checkmk now, but it becomes massively more important. 86% of the ones which we interviewed said, we already or want to use it in the future. I think this shows that cloud and container monitoring are foundational also to you. Yeah? And so we want to further close the visibility gap which we have, and we'll start with improving our AWS monitoring. And for that, yeah, we have a lot of coverage already, so you might wonder, why do you need to do that? And the answer is what you saw yesterday in the Azure talk. Because we want to bring the same experience, maybe even better, for AWS monitoring. What we want is that it becomes very intuitive to navigate. revise our whole services structure also here, build easy-to-navigate dashboards so that Checkmk breaks down the complexity of the cloud for you. And we want to bring a lot more love into the service summaries, the service details, into the pre-built alerts, so that when you roll out AWS monitoring with Checkmk, you feel this Checkmk experience. You install it and you learn, oh, this is something which we didn't know about. Oh, now we know what to fix. And I think very important in the cloud, you do need agents for VMs for monitoring. There's always a base foundation of what metrics you get, but if you want to really have high quality monitoring of virtual machines, you need an agent. And so it's also important that these things are well integrated, that the sources which we have for data, they really flow in smoothly. And this means that you have a great out-of-the-box monitoring. And for the most used and essential cloud service, this is what we can provide. But what about all the other services? And we want to empower teams that they can monitor actually any cloud service. And for that, another demo. And we actually do almost the same thing as we did before. We go to the custom graph editor because we already have pushed these metrics into Checkmk. And so we look for some Azure metrics. Yeah, for Azure we have that. Let's take maybe queries. And Checkmk already recognizes, oh, this is an Azure metric. If you want to use something fancy, you need to add these attributes to the aggregation. Because then we can see, okay, it creates, we actually have two metrics for two distinct things, one for production and one for us staging a MySQL database. And then what you can do is, you can create a service again, and this time, instead of using the manual way, use the auto way, and use the Azure template, and then what you get is, you get services created in the host name structure, which we already have established as a default. Yeah? And that means that you not only get the right host names, but what we also have with that is the right labels, the right inventory attributes, so that these things really fit into the already created dashboards. So it doesn't live as an alien somewhere in Checkmk, but it becomes something which works very smoothly with the rest of your cloud monitoring. Now we go back, because last we talked about Kubernetes monitoring. We redid the Kubernetes monitoring already in 2.1 to provide a really great out-of-the-box experience. Yeah? And in 2.4 we also improved the underlying architecture of the dynamic configuration so that it can handle fast-changing clusters much better. And the OpenTelemetry integration 2.5, it fills that gap, which we had before, because you couldn't look into the pods, into the applications running in Kubernetes. And now with the OpenTelemetry integration, you can actually do that as well. So everything is good? No, because last year, I think, a customer came to me and said, yeah, your Kubernetes monitoring is nice, we want that. But they said, yeah, it doesn't work for us because our Kubernetes clusters are a little bit larger than what you have. Yeah? They have 56 clusters. I think they're even here in the audience. 56 clusters, and the biggest cluster has 220 nodes, and on that you have more than 12,000 pods. That's very large, much larger than we imagined initially with. And I calculate that that's around 60 megabytes of data, which is generated every minute and then sent to Checkmk. And that obviously can become challenging. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we said we need to tackle that. And the other is that the entire ecosystem in Kubernetes is constantly changing. Yeah, there are endpoints which are not gone, there are tooling which is deprecated, and so constantly we have to adapt. And now we said, now is the real time that we rethink the architecture of how we collect the data. And for you to understand, I brought the old architecture, or the current one, and the current one is a pull-only mode. Yeah? We have a special agent. That special agent talks on the one hand side to the API, and on the other hand side, it talks to a Checkmk cluster collector, which has all the information about the nodes and the containers. And what we want to have in Checkmk 3.0 is an architecture which has both pull and push. And at the heart sits a new Checkmk Kubernetes agent, which now generates the agent sections so that it talks to the API server and it gets the metrics from within Kubernetes. And so you have everything within Kubernetes and you don't have a connection from the outside to the API server, but everything happens there. All the heavy calculation happens there. And then you have a thin special agent, which can pull the data. And you can have the mode to push the data to the agent receiver, but also to the metric backend. And the metric backend is actually quite important because if you want to solve scale, we don't only have to solve the scale in the collection piece, but also in the way how we build our dashboards and what kind of objects we create. And our plan is actually that what you see here on the right is the pods, and the pods are the most frequent changing thing inside Kubernetes. They can be very dynamic, and at the moment, every pod, if you want to have metrics for that, you need to have that as a host in Checkmk, and that means a configuration change, and that is actually quite expensive because you also need the RADs. Most of them are short-living, and then you have the big RADs if you have not configured them to be short-living RADs. And this is quite a lot of load. And with the new architecture, what we can actually do is these graphs we create with the data from our high-performance backend where we store metrics, so that you don't have to create pods as hosts anymore. And there's much more which will come in Checkmk 3.0. Yeah? One thing, for example, the Linux agent, we plan to unify the up data and merge it into the controller. There will be, by default, the one directory deployment mode, which we introduced in 2.4, and so far I have only heard good feedback. We'll go into that direction further. The Oracle monitoring, what we spoke around at lunchtime, that will go final. Yeah? We will work on enterprise identity management. One of the pain points is SAML and distributed environments. That's something which we almost have fixed already now. But also unifying the user identity across different connectors so that if you have LDAP and SAML, it works smoothly together. And there are a couple of things which you always need to do just to keep up with the vendors. One example is Veeam. Veeam now via the REST API is one of the things which we plan to do, and also Nutanix go to version 4 of their API. It's nothing sexy, but I think this is the work we just have to do. And with that, I think you can see we do a lot of things across the entire stack. And our goal is that we can really provide this full stack observability, yeah, from the networking up to the entire application stack. And now we move to a very exciting topic, and for that, let's welcome Lars to the stage.
So, AI. Exciting times, right? So many new things that are possible nowadays, and we are living it. We are talking about product integrations of AI, so Checkmk and AI. And there are two ways to get AI wrong. That's the one way, bolted in overnight, hope for the best. And the other is reject it entirely, stamp your product AI free. And nothing of this really helps. Because on the one side, monitoring, it is production, right? You all know this. It's business critical. It's not a sandbox. It's not a playground for unproven tech. We can simply not work on the basis of hallucinations. On the other side, as said, there's so much potential, so many things we can now imagine that we need to explore essentially and find our way through it. So we need to kind of find our way and build something that really helps you with your day-to-day life. And the day-to-day life, the challenge is not really about gathering the data. We all do this on a daily basis. The challenge is making sense of the data. And that's where we want to put the AI, so that you can immediately understand what the monitoring is telling you. And we are following here two paths, essentially. The one you've seen already, kind of the first step, and that is embedding AI into Checkmk, right into the UI, to enhance your troubleshooting, to enhance your analysis. And the other one is enabling AI to open up the rich data Checkmk has towards AI systems. So let's look into the first topic, and again, a demo. Let's see whether the demo gods are with us still. So here's another dashboard. And we are kind of now again in a scenario. I think he was called Sam yesterday. I don't know exactly, but let's assume we are an operator. We are booting up our system in the morning. Our shift just started, and it's our job to have a look at the system and see what is going on, what do I need to look after. And instead of opening dashboards, looking at the alerts, we open up our AI assistant. And we don't do a lot here. We just ask, where do I need to look at right now? And what it is doing here, it is pulling in data from different sources, current information from live status, historical information from the monitoring history, maybe metrics, and then gives me some guidance, a suggestion, yeah? Where do I need to look at? And as you know, we run a web shop. We try to earn money with that, and it now tells me, like, the payment system is down. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's in the morning, why not? Let's have a look at it. It seems to be really important now, yeah? And again, next step in the analysis, pulling in data, live status, historical information, maybe related hosts, something like that. And as we've seen, we have an HTTP 500 something. And many of you know these kinds of errors. And typically, this is not the root cause of things, but something following another issue. And here we see we have another kind of a few hosts already involved. Yeah, we have the Redis system being involved, an application server, and related problems that would normally be a flat list in our monitoring, and we would have to make a picture in mind of what is going on there. And we look at here, and I think the timeline is really nice. There we see something like a deployment. Something was refactored in session cache management. And the next thing that happened is that the number of sessions started climbing. Some limit was hit, a service crashed, and suddenly this API, which I saw initially, is not properly responding anymore. Then we have some costs, okay? And with that, I could already create a ticket for my colleagues to look after that. But before I jump right into it, I would rather verify it, right? I'm a critical person, and I also don't want to receive the blame for spreading false information. So I go down and scroll all the way down to show me the underlying data. So show me what you used to come to this conclusion. And I look at the states first, and that's what we typically see in our views. That's the name of the services, the states, detailed information, and so on. And looking at that, I think, yeah, that looks like this fits the story. And then we can have a look at the metrics as well. And then we can kind of compare the timelines of different metrics and see, okay, 9:10, there was some spike starting, short after, some spike there, and that really seems to fit the whole story. Now, the monitoring doesn't always know everything. Yeah, there's blind spots, details, which we need to gather our own by SSH onto the system and then executing some commands. And the agent here is asking me to do so. I mean, I don't have, but I think that's important to finish the picture, let's say. So let's assume I pasted the commands, I executed them, and pasted that back into our AI assistant. And as you see, it has used now the terminal output as a basis for the next step. This is the output I pasted in here. Yeah, this one. And down below, it comes to the conclusion, yeah, now we we really got to the point. Yeah? Some sessions which should have been cleaned up are not cleaned up anymore. And we also have a written text here, which gives me a nice summary of actually this is what you need to tell your colleagues to fix this quickly. And with that, I can now create the ticket for the colleagues, which is not some incident ticket anymore, but really a qualified ticket. They can really quickly work on this. And in addition to that, I also get some kind of recommendation for myself. Yeah, you had some monitoring in place, we figured that out, but actually you can improve your monitoring configuration to make it better the next time. So, based on this, I think we can all now imagine that we can be so much faster in our analysis, in our troubleshooting with these tools. Yeah? But the potential overall, it is much bigger. If you only look at what is possible in the Checkmk UI, we miss kind of the macro picture. Because out there, there's a rapidly evolving ecosystem. New tools, new models, automation frameworks, all kind of stuff going on there. And that's where we want to kind of come up with our point of enabling AI. And what we want to do there simply is introducing an MCP server to Checkmk. And you heard already about MCP. Simon gladfully explained already briefly what is an MCP. You probably know that already. You have heard that a dozen times over, I don't know, the past month. And what is interesting here to know is how this fits into the Checkmk ecosystem. Because we already have APIs. We have the REST API. We talked a lot about this today. And you might think, yeah, why not just use the REST API? And certainly it works. You can do that and you can achieve things. Connect your Claude to the REST API. It will generate scripts. It will do things for you. But actually there's a bit of a difference. I mean, of course, depends a lot on how you design it. But with Checkmk, the REST API is mostly about executing granular operations on objects. Create a host, delete a host, stuff like this. The REST API, that's the REST API. The MCP server on the other side, we envision that as something which exposes kind of higher level tools. And that's a bit of abstract still. So let's go into a more concrete example. Let's take back one example we had in the demo before. Let's assume we have a question like, why is my payment API critical right now? And if you would use the REST API to answer that question, you would pull together a lot of data from different endpoints. Get the host state, get the service states of multiple objects, and then you combine that somehow and then do something with that. And typically, this is done via some script. Maybe you wrote it yourself. Maybe you did that via some automated tool. When you use an LLM for that, that is actually something that can work. But when you do that with an LLM, it's not deterministic, it's slow, and it burns token a lot. With an MCP server, when you have a higher level tool, as I said, you have maybe a call like diagnose host. You give in the name of the host, and you get exactly the data back that you wanted, so that the LLM can use that for further reasoning or formatting a response for you. And yeah, with that, we have basically abstracted the calls that we have on the REST API side under the umbrella of diagnose host. So you have the deterministic logic within the MCP, while you have the flexibility of the model, the agent on top of that, so that it can then chain the MCP tools so that it can come up with the results you expect more efficiently. So when you hear MCP with Checkmk and you're kind of around the community, in the forum somewhere, then you may think, yeah, that's not something entirely new. And you're right. We had over the past months, we had even multiple people coming up with several projects. Some were more like, really quick experiments, quick Claude thingies, which somehow work, but were kind of also limited in the feature set. And we have also quite sophisticated approaches, which really help you a lot in what you're trying to do with Checkmk. And that is all great. And I think that's actually amazing, an amazing aspect of our community, that it's not always that we have to come up with the ideas and then tell you and so on. It's rather different. Yeah? You are out there, you're seeing challenges, you're seeing new technologies, you think about, that could be a great playground to learn this new technology. So you build these things, and then in the end, for us, you prove a demand. Yeah? You confirm there's something we need to look after. And that's actually really great for us to see. And for us, it's kind of an orientation, right? And but these projects, they have some kind of different perspective compared to our perspective. Yeah? These are built from the outside, so you're external contributors who are working on these MCPs. And as such, you better rely on the external APIs we offer. Otherwise, this stuff will break really quick. So these MCPs, they are built from the outside. They use our official APIs, like the REST API, maybe live status. So you grab through the front door, and you can only get what is offered through that. And when you building that and you have a specific feature in mind, like I want to have something that helps me with rule set analysis, let's say, but there's no endpoint for that, and you're not in the position to build some. So you either accept that and don't build that functionality, or you get creative and say, no, I really don't want to skip that. I want to have the feature. So you may want to re-implement the rule set matching logic. I mean, we have Claude nowadays. How hard can it be? Yeah? And you can make it work for sure, but you build some complexity there, which, will break at some point. Other things, like missing information, you might want to get through unofficial APIs, which may work for now, but not for long. And other things like you build it just for yourself, and then you offer that to the community, and for yourself, it's perfectly fine. You are the admin of that system. And you have admin privileges in Checkmk anyways, so you have it in the MCP as well. You publish that out to the outside, and then there are people approaching that and saying, cool, now I want to offer that to my colleague, but he's just the Windows admin or the Linux admin, whatever, and you would rather rely on the authorization model of Checkmk. But it's not in the MCP because it connects as an admin user to Checkmk. So you have kind of a problem matching the requirements that people have typically. And kind of the worst thing is when you build an MCP, which is a thin wrapper around the REST API, you typically get raw, big JSON chunks from the REST API into the model, which is a lot of data, needs to be fiddled around, and that burns tokens like hell. And that might be okay for now. The tokens are quite cheap nowadays still, but tomorrow, well, we don't know, yeah? So we need to build something sustainable for Checkmk, for the ecosystem, and that's actually why we think we should build a foundation, not only for us, but for all of us. So with Checkmk 3, the idea is that we build a foundation with that MCP that we can enable your AI use cases. So that will be, as said, the MCP. We will build our features on top. So what I've shown in the demo will be based on that system, and we open that up essentially to your own AI systems. And whatever that is, can be a cloud code, can be something you build on your own and want to connect there. So it's vendor agnostic, model agnostic. You can connect what you want. So we solve the integration challenges. Partners, community, build something on top, share that, and the users can kind of retain the control over the security boundaries. So let me conclude a bit. And our MCP, it will run on the inside of Checkmk, so within the Checkmk site. It has access to all the functionality, no need to re-implement something. We are working we are abstracting things away so that the conversations, that the use cases we have in mind, that this is actually tuned so that we are really token efficient by design. We are within Checkmk, so we have authentication, authorization, the whole machinery that we have internally available so that we can natively use that. It's deployed with Checkmk, so you don't have to manage anything in addition to that. It just comes with Checkmk, it is there, so it's nothing to run extra for you. And since it, again, runs within Checkmk, it also has all the data available. Whatever we feel for the use cases we want to cover, we can easily offer through that MCP API. So now, certainly you may ask, what can I have exactly and when? So quickly, embedded AI features, all our cloud users will have access to. Based on the MCP server, it will be there as well. And this way, you can connect your cloud, your other AI tools to Checkmk Cloud. And for self-hosted, we will have the MCP server. So that there, again, you can connect your own AI agents. Yeah, a few words on the difference we see here in the picture, the embedded AI features. So it's similar to the AI features we already have. We all know that things need to be tuned quite properly. The prompts, the models, so that we get a good quality feature. And currently, we are in a learning phase, as most of us actually. We want to carefully choose all of the combination of the model and the prompts, and that we can only do in Checkmk Cloud properly. As well as the short release cycles we actually need. There we can deploy with a click, and yeah, that's only possible in Checkmk Cloud nowadays. About the MCP server, the exact feature set will differ based on the editions. What exactly will be in which edition we are currently discussing. So I don't want to promise anything there yet. And yeah, as promised in regards to timing, we are building the MCP right now. So the plan is to release something this summer. A preview version, as said, self-hosted Checkmk Cloud for you. And the embedded cloud features we are planning to release incrementally over the year. So let me bring this back to where we started. You can force AI into everything. You can completely skip it. And that's not our way. We want to provide you with features which actually help you where you need it, improving your root cause analysis, your troubleshooting, and providing you interfaces so that you can build your own stuff on top. And whatever you put on top is runs on your terms. Yeah, it's your data, it's your stack, and should be your control. Thank you. Ich soll mich da hinsetzen.
Shall we all sit down for questions?
We'll all sit down because we're not yet at the questions. Because for the first time, we talk about what is beyond Checkmk 3.0. Yeah? So typically, we only share what we've planned with the next release, but we have drafted our vision for the future as well and want to share that with you. And for that to understand, I think let's start with what Checkmk stands for. Checkmk delivers unified IT observability for the hybrid world, for on-premise and for the cloud. Because we believe that your IT teams shouldn't have to jump between 5 different tools. And with Checkmk, you get a single platform for full visibility, across infrastructure and applications, from mainframes in your data center to Kubernetes in the cloud. And I think increasingly important in the current times we are, you also get full control of your digital sovereignty. You choose where your monitoring lives, self-hosted or in the cloud. And Checkmk ensures that your IT runs smoothly so that your business can stay focused on your customers. And for years, Checkmk has told you when something broke and why. But everything after, digging in, figuring out the real cause and fixing it, it was you. And that is what we are going after next. Beyond 3.0, Checkmk starts becoming the open system of intelligence for AI. And that works two ways. The AI we embed, but also the AI we enable. The embedded AI is the stuff which is native in Checkmk, the agent and assistants which live in there, and the enabled AI is the open door that you can connect your agents with Checkmk. So that your infrastructure agent can take then that context and reason and identify the actual root cause. And now it either fixes it or it tells you exactly how to do so. And at the bottom of it is your hybrid stack, on-premise, cloud, network, on the edge. And then approved fixes, they flow down and become real changes in your system. And your systems then feed back up to Checkmk. That is the loop. And as it runs, Checkmk keeps moving forward, telling you exactly what broke and why, and going from telling you also to helping you fix it. And that's what we call autonomous observability. And it's a world where Checkmk doesn't just watch, it's a world where Checkmk also helps you really fix it. And for Checkmk to be that system of intelligence, Checkmk needs signals. So we extended our foundation on metrics in 2.5. And in 3.0, we add NetFlow signals, so we get much more depth on the network layer. And lastly, we will finally enhance our existing log capabilities for a fully fledged log management solution. And with that, Checkmk has all the data. Checkmk can then correlate all these signals for a complete view of your IT. So this is our concrete path forward. It's a path to full stack observability for your entire hybrid stack. And it's observability as we believe it should be: deep, robust, open, and sustainable. And 3.0 will be a major stepping stone in our journey towards autonomous observability. Observability that does not just show you what is happening, but increasingly helps you act on it. And with that, we have reached the end of Checkmk Conference number 12. And I hope these 2 days, they gave you a real sense of where we are headed, and importantly, also why we want to do these things. We really loved sharing this work with you. And we are actually very eager now to hear your feedback. And I think we still have a little bit of time for questions, so let's use that. And I think we hand to you now to start some Q&A.
Thank you, Martin. We have a lot of questions, so I think we will not be able to take all of them, but we just go from the top and see how far we get. First one, is NetFlow included in the license? There's more questions around this. What's actually meant here is in Pro Ultimate Cloud, where is NetFlow going to be included?
You know best about it. So we don't know yet because we are at the moment discussing this internally. We want to make that accessible, but we also might have to monetize part of it. It's a difficult question at the moment because this depends a little bit on a lot of things which we can't talk about. Yeah, sorry.
Right. So maybe that's one for Lars. When do you replace RRDs?
Not anytime soon. So actually, I mean, of course, we have discussions around that, yeah. And the time we have discussed a lot about ClickHouse and what role will it play in our tech stack. More and more colleagues realized over time, yeah, RRDs they are old, of course, but they do a really great job. They are super efficient in what they do, and especially in the smaller environments, you can't easily spin up a ClickHouse there. Yeah? You're limited in resources, so yeah, it's really here to stay for the time being. Maybe there's coming up, I don't know, at some point an efficient metric backend which we could use to replace that at some point, but not in the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Lars. So maybe the next two, Torsten, you can tackle. First one is AI written code reviewed before it finds its way into Checkmk? And what actually happened to 2.6?
Both great questions, actually. So the question for the first one, which part of the Checkmk code base? So I can promise that everything that hits production is reviewed. A developer currently still has a look on everything that hits into production. Obviously, we also have a lot of internal toolings, and for internal toolings, we want to move at a decent pace, and sometimes this means that not all of the code is reviewed for internal toolings that help us build Checkmk, but everything that is moving into production is something where the developer still has a look on it. Regarding version 2.6, during, let's say, the initial phase of 2.6, it more and more became clear to us that the feature set that we want to land is so big that it deserves a proper version upgrade to 3.0. So basically what happened is 2.6, it was planned at the beginning, and then we changed that to 3.0.
Thank you, Torsten. One more, Martin. I think you're going to like it. Can we skip 2.5 and go to 3 straight away?
Yeah,
seems to be done.
I mean, I have to tell that to the developers too.
Should have done that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we will work our quickest way to get 3.0 done. We are very ambitious, and I think what we probably do is at some point do a trade-off, because a lot of the things, I think it's not worth waiting for 2 years or 1.5 years. So our goal is really released next year in February or March, and then I think we will try to not make it faster, because otherwise you don't get all the nice things. But yeah, I also would like to have that as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's all we have time for.
What we can offer is, Sarah, maybe we do a community call afterwards where we still save all the questions, and then in that community call, because there are like, I think 50 to 100 questions which we have, and then we just sit together on a couch and then we just answer every question. We can also record that, I don't mind, and then we share that with you, and yeah, that way you still get an answer to everything.
Thank you.